The sky above Calrix 4 burned with colors that should not exist in nature deep. Purples mixed with sickly greens as the Dragoth. Bioships descended through the atmosphere, like falling stars of disease and death. Elder Themis stood on the observation platform of the central colony tower and watched his peaceful world die before his eyes. The Villani had lived on Calrix 4 for 3 generations, building their mining colony into a thriving community of artists, traders, and families who knew nothing of war. Their defense systems consisted of basic meteor shields and navigation beacons, tools meant to protect against space debris, not an invasion force. Now, those inadequate defenses sparked and failed as organic weapons of impossible design tore through them like paper. Governor, the Eastern District is gone. Dar Calrus burst onto the observation deck, his forearms trembling with fear. His usually calm voice cracked with panic. The Dragoth are consuming everything: buildings, vehicles, even the ground itself. Themis felt his dual hearts hammering in his chest. He had led this colony for 20 cycles, guided his people through trade disputes and resource shortages, but nothing had prepared him for this horror. Below, he could see the Dragoth swarm spreading across the colony like a living plague. Thousands of parasitic creatures that moved as one unified nightmare. "How long do we have?" Themis asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "Days, maybe less," Calrus said, his voice hollow with despair. "They consume biological matter to fuel their reproduction. Every Villani they take makes the swarm larger and stronger." Themis watched as another district went dark. The lights extinguished as the Dragoth overwhelmed the power grid. Screams echoed through the communication channels, families calling for help that would not come. The Villani had no military, no weapons designed to kill. Their culture had evolved past such primitive needs, or so they had believed. "Send the distress call on all frequencies," Themis commanded, moving to the communication console with speed born of desperation. Every channel, every language, emergency protocols. Calrus worked the controls with practiced efficiency despite his shaking hands. Within moments, the colony's transmission arrays broadcast their desperate plea across the stars. The message was simple and terrible. "This is Calrix 4 colony, under attack by Dragoth swarm. We have no defenses and no hope. Please, anyone who can hear this, we are dying." The call raced outward through the void at the speed of light, carrying with it the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, would care enough to respond. Hours passed like torture as the Dragoth pressed closer to the central colony. Themis organized evacuations to the underground shelters, while Calrus monitored the communication channels for any sign of rescue. The first responses came from nearby systems' cold, calculated rejections. The Korthan Republic sent a brief message. "Calrix system is outside our defense perimeter. We cannot risk engaging the Dragoth swarm." The Pelian Confederacy was more honest in their cowardice. "We lack the military capability to face such a threat. May your souls find peace in the afterlife." System after system responded with variations of the same message: sympathy mixed with self-preservation, prayers offered instead of ships. The Galactic Council acknowledged the distress call, but stated that mobilizing a defensive force would take weeks. Themis knew they would all be dead or worse long before any Council fleet arrived. "Nothing," Calrus said after the 10th rejection came through, his voice breaking. "The entire galaxy hears us dying, and no one will come." Themis felt rage building beneath his fear rage at the species who preached cooperation and unity, but abandoned allies when danger arrived. He thought of the children huddled in the shelters below, innocent lives that had done nothing to deserve this fate. "Keep broadcasting," he ordered. "Someone must care. Someone must have the courage. Governor." Calrus interrupted, his eyes wide as he read something on his display. "I am picking up something strange." The message passed through human space 3 hours ago. Themis felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature as the colony's climate systems failed. Humanity, the species that every civilized race feared above all others. Stories circulated through every corner of the galaxy about the humans and their terrible fleets, about what they had done during the border wars. The Korthan Empire had tried to expand into human territory 5 cycles ago, confident in their numerical superiority and advanced weaponry. Humanity had responded with such overwhelming violence that the Korthan fleet ceased to exist within days. Entire armadas had been reduced to debris fields. Korthan soldiers who surrendered had been shown no mercy, or so the stories claimed. "What are they doing?" Themis asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I do not know," Kelrus admitted, his hands dancing across the controls. Human space is silent. No transmissions, no acknowledgement of our distress call, nothing. Of course, they would ignore the call. Themis thought bitterly. Why would humanity care about a dying Vellani colony? The humans had made it clear through their actions that they wanted nothing to do with the rest of the galaxy. They kept to their borders and destroyed anyone foolish enough to cross them. Another explosion rocked the tower as the Dragoth reached the inner defensive ring. The swarm had grown exponentially, feeding on the colonists they had captured. Through the windows, Themis could see the writhing mass of organic horror advancing like a tidal wave of teeth and claws and hunger. "Seal the tower," he ordered, knowing it would only buy them hours at best. "Get everyone to the deepest shelters. We will make our last stand there." Kelrus nodded and activated the emergency protocols. Heavy doors slammed shut throughout the building, and the few remaining security systems came online. It was pathetic compared to what they faced, but it was all they had. As Themis helped evacuate the tower staff to the underground levels, he passed by families clutching each other in terror. Children who would never grow up, artists who would never create again, all of them doomed because the galaxy had abandoned them. He wanted to offer them hope, to tell them rescue was coming, but he could not bring himself to lie. Deep in the command bunker, surrounded by frightened faces and failing equipment, Themis listened to the sounds of the Dragoth tearing through the levels above them. It would not be long now. He thought about recording a final message, something for the galaxy to remember them by, but what was the point? No one cared enough to save them. Why would anyone care enough to remember? The lights flickered as power systems began to fail. In the darkness, someone started singing one of the old Vylani songs about finding peace among the stars. Others joined in, their voices trembling but defiant, choosing beauty in the face of annihilation. Themis closed his eyes and added his voice to theirs, singing for the children who deserve better, for the future that would never come. The bunker's emergency communication system suddenly crackled to life with a sound that made everyone stop singing. It was a transmission, powerful and close, cutting through all other frequencies with military precision. A human voice, deep and calm, spoke words that seemed impossible. Calrix 4. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Naval Service. Hold on, we are coming for you. The bunker fell silent as every Vellani stared at the communication console in shock and disbelief. The humans were coming, but whether that meant rescue or just a different kind of death, none of them could say. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HNS Valiant and replayed the distress call for the 5th time. The translation software rendered the Vellani language into clear English, but it was the raw emotion underneath that hit him hardest. Fear, desperation, the sound of children crying in the background. These were universal languages that needed no translation. Admiral General Walsh is on the secure channel from Earth Defense Command. Lieutenant Amy Chun announced from her communication station, her young face showing concern. He wants to discuss the Calrix situation. Morrison nodded and moved to his private-ready room, knowing what was coming. The general would cite regulations, protocols, the delicate political situation with the Galactic Council, every logical reason why humanity should stay out of this fight. General Peter Walsh's face appeared on the screen, his gray hair and lined features showing the weight of decades protecting Earth. "Jake, tell me you are not considering this," he said without preamble. "A colony is dying, sir," Morrison replied calmly. "We have the capability to respond. We have the capability to start another war." Walsh countered, his voice sharp. "The Galactic Council barely tolerates our existence after what happened with the Corthans. If we deploy the fleet without authorization, the Council is not sending anyone." Morrison interrupted, allowing some of his anger to show. "I have monitored their communications. Every species is offering prayers and sympathy while people die. The Dragath will consume that entire colony before the Council even finishes debating which committee should handle the crisis." Walsh sighed, a sound of pure frustration. "I understand your position, Admiral, but we have to think about the bigger picture. Humanity's reputation is already terrible across the galaxy. They call us monsters, warmongers, destroyers, because we defended ourselves." Morrison's voice rose despite his attempt to remain calm. "The Corthans invaded our space, killed millions of our people, enslaved entire colonies. We stopped them, and now the galaxy fears us for it." "Yes, and that fear keeps us safe," Walsh argued. "Every species knows that attacking humanity means total destruction. It is an effective deterrent." Morrison walked to the viewport and looked out at the assembled Fleet 47 warships, the largest concentration of human military power since the Border Wars. Each ship represented incredible destructive capability, weapons designed through centuries of human conflict and innovation. But they also represented something else, the capacity to protect. "Sir, with respect, I did not join the Navy to hide behind our borders while innocents die," Morrison said quietly. "The Vellani are no threat to us. They are artists and traders who have never hurt anyone. If we let them die when we could save them, what does that make us?" "Survivors," Walsh replied bluntly. "Sometimes survival means making hard choices, Jake." "I am making a hard choice right now," Morrison said, straightening to attention. "I am deploying the fleet to Calrix 4. If you want to court-martial me when this is over, I will accept that consequence." The silence stretched between them for long moments. Walsh stared at Morrison through the screen, and Morrison wondered if he had just ended his career. Then, unexpectedly, Walsh smiled a small, sad expression. "You sound like I did 30 years ago," the general said softly. "Before I learned that the galaxy does not reward heroism, only strength." He paused, then added, "The fleet is yours, Admiral. Do what you think is right. I will handle the political fallout." Morrison felt relief wash through him. "Thank you, sir." "Do not thank me yet," Walsh warned. "You are walking into a nightmare. The Dragath do not surrender, do not negotiate, and they will use the colonists as living shields. This will be bloody." "Understood, sir," Morrison acknowledged. "And Jake, come home," Walsh said. "We lost too many good people in the last war. I do not want to lose you too." The transmission ended, and Morrison returned to the bridge where his senior staff waited with barely concealed anticipation. They had all heard the distress call, and every officer on the Valiant knew what it meant to ignore a cry for help. Captain Lisa Hendricks approached him immediately. She commanded the Valiant under Morrison's fleet authority, and he trusted her judgment completely. "Admiral, the crew is ready. We are just waiting for your order." "What is our tactical situation, Commander Foster?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. Commander Ryan Foster brought up a holographic display showing the Calrix system. 3 days at maximum faster than light speed, sir. We will arrive with full combat readiness, but the Dragath will have had significant time to fortify their position. Intelligence estimates they have at least 40 bioships and an unknown number of ground forces. Ground assault will be necessary to clear the colony, Morrison observed. Marine Commander Ben Carter is standing by with 3 full battalions, Hendricks reported. Dr. Sophie Grant has medical teams prepped for alien casualties, though she admits knowing very little about Villani physiology. Morrison appreciated their preparedness. His crew had trained for years to respond to any crisis, but this would test them in ways they had never experienced. What about civilian evacuation? Transport ships can hold approximately 10,000 refugees if we pack them tight, Lieutenant Chun said. Intelligence suggests the colony population was around 30,000 before the attack. Before the attack, meaning thousands were already dead or taken by the Dragath. Morrison felt anger burning in his chest, the same righteous fury that had driven him to destroy the Korthan invasion fleet. The galaxy saw that fury as proof of human savagery, but they did not understand the reason behind it. Lieutenant Chun, send a message to all fleet commanders, Morrison ordered. Full deployment. We jump in 30 minutes. Commander Foster, I want tactical plans for engaging the Dragath while minimizing damage to the colony. Captain Hendricks, prepare the Valiant to lead the assault. Yes, sir. The responses came simultaneously as the bridge erupted into controlled chaos officers moving to their stations. Displays lighting up with tactical data, communication channels buzzing with orders. Morrison moved to his command chair and initiated the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Morrison to all ships. In 30 minutes, we depart for Calrix 4 to engage the Dragath swarm and evacuate the Villani colony. I know what you are thinking. We are starting another conflict, risking another war, maybe proving the galaxy right about humanity being too dangerous. He paused, making sure every sailor and marine in the fleet heard what came next. But I also know what kind of people serve in this fleet. You are the sons and daughters of Earth, trained to fight but never taught to ignore someone crying for help. The Villani are innocent civilians facing extinction, and we have the power to save them. So we are going to fly across 3 systems. Fight a war the rest of the galaxy is too afraid to fight, and show them what humanity really stands for. Cheers erupted across the communication channels. Thousands of voices raised in defiant determination. Morrison felt pride surge through him. Whatever the Galactic Council thought about humanity, he knew the truth. Humans were warriors, yes, but they fought for the right reasons. Admiral, Ambassador Marcus Webb is requesting urgent communication from the diplomatic ship, Chun reported. Morrison grimaced. He had hoped to be underway before the diplomatic corps heard about this. Put him through. Webb's face appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of concern and resignation. Admiral, please tell me you have authorization from Earth for this deployment. General Walsh knows, Morrison said carefully, which was not exactly an answer. That is what I was afraid of, Webb sighed. Do you have any idea what kind of political disaster this could create? We have spent 5 years rebuilding relationships with the Council after the Korthan incident. The Council is letting people die, Marcus, Morrison said glumly. How am I supposed to respect an organization that talks about unity and cooperation, but abandons colonies the moment danger appears? I agree with you, Webb admitted, surprising Morrison. But my job is to manage the consequences of your actions, and those consequences will be severe. Half the galaxy already thinks humanity is too violent, too aggressive. When they see our entire battle fleet deploying, let them see it, Morrison interrupted. Let them see humanity coming to rescue people they were too afraid to save themselves. Maybe our reputation as destroyers will shift to protectors. Webb smiled sadly. Or maybe they will see this as proof that humans cannot resist fighting, that we look for any excuse to deploy our military. You are gambling with our entire diplomatic position, Jake. I know, Morrison acknowledged. But some gambles are worth taking, The ambassador nodded slowly. Then I suppose I should prepare statements for the council. Try to keep the body count low, Admiral, both ours and theirs. It makes my job easier. Morrison returned to watching his crew work, proud of their efficiency and dedication. In 25 minutes, the greatest military force humanity had ever assembled would jump into the unknown to save strangers. The galaxy feared them, misunderstood them, painted them as monsters in their children's stories. But monsters did not answer distress calls. Monsters did not risk everything to save people they had never met. "Fleet reports ready for faster-than-light jump," Hendricks announced. Morrison took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. "All ships, engage drives." Elder Themis huddled in the command bunker beneath Calrix 4 and listened to the sounds of death approaching from above. The Dragath had broken through to the third sublevel, and their horrible cheering echoed through the ventilation shafts. Around him, the surviving Velani waited in terrified silence, knowing these were their final hours. The human message was real? Dark Elris asked for the 10th time, his voice filled with desperate hope. "They are truly coming?" The transmission was authenticated. Themis confirmed, though doubt gnawed at his dual hearts. "Whether they come to save us or claim the system for themselves, I cannot say." 3 hours had passed since Admiral Morrison's message, and nothing had changed except the number of dead. The Dragath pressed closer with each passing minute, their hunger insatiable and their tactics horrifyingly effective. They used captured Velani as hosts, transforming living beings into more warriors for their swarm. "I do not understand why humans would help us," Calrus said quietly. "Every species knows the stories about the border wars, about what they did to the Korthan fleet." Themis had heard those stories too. The Korthan Empire had been one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, with weapons and ships that had conquered dozens of systems. They had looked at human space with greedy eyes and saw only primitive newcomers ripe for subjugation. The war lasted 11 days. By the end, the Korthan invasion force no longer existed. Human ships hunted down every vessel, showed no mercy to surrendering soldiers, and sent a message that echoed across every inhabited world. Do not touch humanity's borders. Perhaps the stories were exaggerated, a young Velani named Cerise suggested from across the bunker. She held her daughter close, the child's eyes wide with fear. "The debris fields are still there," Calrus countered grimly. "I have seen the telescope images, thousands of Korthan ships reduced to wreckage. Whatever else the humans are, they know how to destroy." Another explosion shook the bunker, closer this time. Dust fell from the ceiling, and several Velani cried out in alarm. The Dragath were breaching the 4th sublevel now, only 2 barriers away from reaching the survivors. Themis checked the defense console and saw that their automated systems were nearly depleted. They had maybe an hour of ammunition left, probably less. After that, the doors would be their only protection, and Dragath could burn through doors with their acidic secretions. "Governor, we should record final messages for anyone who finds this bunker," Calrus suggested, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "So our families across the stars will know what happened." Themis wanted to refuse, to insist they would survive this nightmare, but he could not lie to his people anymore. "Yes, prepare the recording system. Everyone should have the chance to say goodbye." As Velani began taking turns at the communication console, speaking tearful messages to loved ones they would never see again, Themis wondered what the galaxy would think when they found this record. Would anyone care that a peaceful species had been wiped out? Would the Galactic Council issue a strongly worded statement and move on to other business? The humans cared enough to respond to the distress call. A small voice in his mind whispered, "Maybe they are different than the stories suggest. Or maybe they are coming to claim our system before the Dragath can establish a foothold. another voice argued. Either way, we are just caught between two predators. Themis activated his own recording, staring into the camera with exhaustion weighing down every movement. This is Elder Themis, governor of Calrix 4 colony. If you are watching this, then we are all dead. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The Dragoth swarm overwhelmed our defenses in days. We called for help, and the galaxy turned away. Only humanity responded, though they have not arrived in time. To my family on Vela Prime, know that I loved you all and thought of you in my final moments. To the Galactic Council, your failure to protect member colonies will haunt you when other species face the same fate. And to whoever recovers this recording learned from our mistake. Beautiful art and noble ideals mean nothing against those who embrace violence. Sometimes peace must be defended with force. He ended the recording and noticed that Cerise was watching him with understanding in her eyes. She had just finished her own message, urging her daughter to be brave and remember their people's traditions. "How long now?" she asked quietly. "Minutes," Themis admitted. "The Dragoth will breach the 5th sublevel soon." And then, the bunker's emergency sensors suddenly screamed to life with proximity warnings. Calrus rushed to the display, and his forearms began shaking violently. Multiple faster-than-light signatures detected in system. He shouted. Massive energy readings, military-grade weapon systems, ship classifications matching human warships. Everyone in the bunker turned to stare at the display as Calrus brought up the sensor feed. Themis felt his breath catch as he saw the impossible 47 ships emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Calrix system, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "They came," Cerise whispered in awe. "The humans actually came for us." The communication console crackled to life with a transmission so powerful it overrode every other frequency. The same calm human voice from before spoke across all channels, but this time there was steel beneath the words. "Attention Dragoth forces in the Calrix system. This is Admiral Jake Morrison, commanding the human naval service fleet. You have attacked the civilian population and committed acts of genocide against the Volani people. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Silence followed the message, a brief moment where the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then the sensors showed the Dragoth bioships responding, their organic hulls pulsing as they powered weapons and adjusted course to engage the human fleet. "They are not withdrawing," Calrus said unnecessarily. "The Dragoth never retreat." "Then they are about to learn what happens when you face humanity," Themis replied, surprised by the hope surging through him. The battle began as human ships accelerated into the system with impossible speed. Their formation was perfect, their approach calculated with mathematical precision. The Dragoth launched swarms of smaller craft parasitic fighters that could attach to enemy ships and bore through hulls. Human point defense systems opened fire, and space lit up like a festival. Thousands of precise shots eliminated the parasite fighters before they could close distance. And the human fleet did not even slow down. "They fight like they did during the border wars," Calrus observed, his voice mixing fear and fascination. "Overwhelming firepower, perfect coordination, no hesitation." Themis watched as the first human ship, the massive vessel identified as HNS, Valiant, engaged a Dragoth bioship 3 times its size. The humans fired missiles that seemed to think for themselves, dodging organic defense tendrils and striking weak points with surgical precision. The Dragoth ship ruptured and began dying, its biological components failing as human weapons tore it apart. "Governor, the Dragoth forces in the colony are pulling back," a Volani at another console announced. "They are withdrawing to reinforce their ships." Themis could barely believe what he was seeing. The swarm that had seemed unstoppable was retreating, abandoning their assault on the bunker to face the new threat. All around him, Volani were crying with relief, embracing each other, as the immediate danger faded. But the battle in orbit was intensifying. More Dragath bioships emerged from hiding spots throughout the system, surrounding the human fleet in a classic swarm maneuver. The humans were outnumbered nearly 2-1, and the Dragath were adapting their tactics. "They are trying to overwhelm the human ships with numbers," Kelrus said grimly. "The same strategy that has destroyed every fleet that faced them." Themis watched with his heart pounding as the situation deteriorated for their rescuers. Dragath ships closed in from all sides, their organic weapons launching acidic projectiles and biological mines. Several human ships took damage, their shields flaring as they absorbed impacts. Then the human fleet did something unexpected. They stopped fighting as individual ships and moved as one unified force. Each vessel supported its neighbors, creating overlapping fields of fire that nothing could penetrate. When Dragath ships tried to swarm a single target, the entire human formation rotated to bring more weapons to bear. "Incredible," Kelrus breathed. "They fight like one organism, perfectly synchronized." A massive Dragath command ship, easily the size of 3 human vessels, pushed toward the center of the battle, its entire hull covered in weapon ports and armor plating grown from consumed metals. It fired a devastating biological weapon that looked like liquid death, a stream of acid that could dissolve anything it touched. The HNS Valiant turned directly into the attack. Themis watched in horror as the human ship accelerated toward the command vessel, its shield struggling against the acid weapon. Then, at the last possible moment, the Valiant rolled and fired every weapon it had. The Dragath command ship exploded in a spectacular display of biological failure. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as systems failed and organic components died. The destruction was so complete that debris rained down toward Calrix 4's atmosphere. "They are winning," Cerise shouted, her daughter clinging to her with excitement instead of fear now. The battle continued for another 30 minutes, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Sergeant Kate Riley felt the assault craft shudder as it punched through Calrix 4's atmosphere, the hull glowing from friction heat despite the advanced thermal shields. Around her, 20 Marines checked their weapons and sealed their combat armor, veterans of border conflicts, who had seen action against pirates and raiders, but never against something like the Dragath swarm. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. Sensors show heavy Dragath presence in the surrounding blocks. Expect immediate contact. Riley checked her rifle one final time and opened the squad channel. "Listen up, Marines. Our mission is simple: protect civilians and eliminate every Dragath in this colony. The bugs do not surrender and they do not run away, so put them down hard and fast. Remember your training, watch your sectors, and nobody plays hero. We go home together or not at all." "Ora!" The response echoed through the channel, and Riley felt pride surge through her. These were good soldiers, well-trained and motivated by something more than orders. They were here to save lives. The craft hit the ground with bone-jarring force, and the rear ramp dropped immediately. Riley was first out, her boots hitting alien soil as her helmet display painted targets across her field of vision. Dragath warriors swarmed through the ruins of nearby buildings, their chitinous bodies moving with horrifying speed. "Contact front. Open fire," Riley shouted, dropping to one knee and squeezing her trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder as high-velocity rounds tore through the first Dragath, the creature's armored shell cracking under the sustained fire. Her squad spread out in textbook formation, creating overlapping fields of fire that caught the swarm in a deadly crossfire. These were not the massive bioships from orbit, but ground warriors, smaller, faster, adapted for close combat. They had multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws, mandibles that dripped with acidic venom, and compound eyes that never stopped tracking their prey. Riley's heads-up display showed more Dragath emerging from underground tunnels. The bugs had honeycombed the colony with passages, turning the entire area into a three-dimensional battleground. Johnson, seal that tunnel with explosives. Davis, watch our six. The rest of you, advance by pairs. The Marines moved like they had trained for years, because they had. Each soldier covered their partner as they leapfrogged forward, their armor's sensors sharing target data across the entire squad. When a Dragoth lunged from a collapsed building, 3 rifles tracked it instantly and cut it down before it could reach the nearest Marine. Sergeant Riley, this is Commander Carter. Her commanding officer's voice cut through the combat chatter. What is your situation? Heavy resistance in Sector 7, Riley reported between bursts of fire. At least 40 hostiles eliminated, but more keep coming. We need to collapse these tunnels or they will flank us all day. Agreed, Carter replied. Engineers are moving to your position with sealing charges. Hold for 5 minutes. 5 minutes felt like an eternity in combat, but Riley's squad held their ground. They established a defensive perimeter around the assault craft, using the ruins for cover while methodically eliminating every Dragoth that approached. The creatures were relentless, showing no fear even as their numbers dwindled. Movement caught Riley's eye, not Dragoth, but something else. Through the smoke and debris, she saw Vellani civilians huddled in a partially collapsed building, trapped between the Marines and a group of Dragoth circling their position. Carter, we have civilians in the open, grid reference 47 Delta. Riley transmitted urgently. Permission to break formation and extract. Negative, Sergeant. Carter's voice was tight with frustration. You are the anchor point for that entire sector. If you move, the line collapses. Riley watched the Dragoth closing on the Vellani 3 adults and 2 children, all showing signs of starvation and terror. The bugs would reach them in seconds, and there was nothing she could do without abandoning her position. Screw that, she muttered, making a decision that would probably get her court-martialed. Davis, you have command. Hold this position no matter what. Riley, what are you? Davis started to protest, but Riley was already moving. She sprinted across open ground, her armor servos boosting her speed beyond what unassisted humans could achieve. Dragoth warriors diverted toward this new target, recognizing her as a threat. Riley did not slow down. She fired her rifle one-handed while running, the weapon's computer-assisted targeting putting rounds exactly where they needed to go. The first Dragoth died with Riley's boot caving in its skull. She used the creature's body as a springboard, launching herself into a cluster of 3 more warriors. Her rifle emptied in a sustained burst that tore through chitin and organs, and she dropped the weapon to draw her combat knife. The blade was made from human-engineered alloys, monomolecular edge sharp enough to cut through tank armor. Riley drove it into a Dragoth spraying cluster and ripped sideways, feeling the creature's death throes nearly tear the knife from her grip. Another warrior slashed at her back. The claws scraped across her armor, but could not penetrate the composite plating. Riley spun and delivered a kick that sent the Dragoth crashing into rubble, then retrieved her rifle and finished it with a controlled pair of shots to its central mass. The last warrior tried to flee. Recognizing defeat, Riley shot it in the back without hesitation. Civilians, move to me now, she shouted, waving the terrified Vellani toward her position. They ran with desperate speed, the adults carrying the children. Riley provided covering fire as they crossed the open space, her display showing more Dragoth converging on their location. She had maybe 30 seconds before being overwhelmed. The Vellani reached her position, and Riley grabbed the nearest adult, a female with 4 arms who was bleeding from multiple wounds. Stay behind me. Do not stop moving until you reach the human soldiers by the landing craft. You saved us. The Vellani gasped in broken English. Thank you, thank you. Save the thanks for later. Riley interrupted, already backpedaling toward her squad. Run! They ran, and Riley covered their retreat with methodical precision. Every round counted. Every shot had to drop a target. Her armor's ammunition counter showed 60 rounds remaining, then 40, then 20. "Riley, incoming from above!" Davis's voice screamed across the channel. She looked up and saw her death descending, a massive dragoth that must have weighed 300 kilograms, dropping from a ruined building directly toward her position. There was no time to dodge, no chance to bring her rifle to bear. Then, a massive explosion tore the creature apart in midair, showering her with biological debris. Riley spun and saw Davis standing beside an anti-armor launcher, smoke still rising from the barrel. "Nobody kills my sergeant except me," Davis shouted with battlefield humor. Riley reached her squad's perimeter with the civilians, and her Marines immediately moved to protect the Villani. A medic Corporal Amy Lee started treating the wounded despite having no idea about Villani physiology. "You disobeyed a direct order," Davis said conversationally while reloading his launcher. "Court-martial me later," Riley replied, swapping magazines in her rifle. "Right now, seal those damn tunnels." The engineers arrived with demolition charges and began placing them in tunnel entrances throughout the sector. Meanwhile, across the colony, similar scenes played out as human Marines engaged Dragoth forces in brutal close-quarters combat. Commander Carter coordinated the entire operation from a mobile command post, watching displays that showed real-time footage from every squad. The Dragoth were fighting with suicidal determination, but human training and firepower were overwhelming them. "Sir, Dr. Grant is requesting permission to establish field hospitals in secure zones," a communication officer reported. "Granted," Carter replied. "Tell her to prioritize the most critically wounded Villani." Dr. Sophie Grant set up her medical station in a building that had been cleared of Dragoth, and within minutes she was dealing with injuries she had never studied or imagined. Villani physiology was completely different from human. They had dual circulatory systems, different organ placement, and blood chemistry that her scanners struggled to analyze. "I need you to tell me where it hurts," she said to a wounded Villani male, using her portable translator. "Point to the pain." The Villani gestured weakly to his midsection, where acid burns had eaten through skin and muscle. Grant consulted her medical database, cross-referencing alien physiology texts she had downloaded during the flight to Cowrix 4. It was like performing surgery with an instruction manual written in a foreign language. "Okay, this is going to hurt, but I need to clean the wound," she explained, prepping antiseptic that she hoped would not kill her patient. "Try to stay still." As she worked, more wounded arrived carried by Marines who had risked their lives to extract them from combat zones. Grant's medical team expanded rapidly, human doctors and medics learning alien biology through desperate trial and error. They lost some patients, saved others, and never stopped trying. Above the colony, Admiral Morrison watched the ground operation through satellite feeds while managing the orbital situation. The Dragoth bioships were destroyed, but he had ships reporting damage and casualties from the battle. "Captain Hendricks, status on the Valiant?" he asked. "All breaches on decks 7 and 9, but we are sealing them," Hendricks reported. Casualties were light 3 dead. 3 days after the battle, Elder Themis stood in what remained of the colony's central plaza and watched. Human engineers helped Villani workers rebuild their shattered homes. The scene would have been impossible to imagine a week ago. The galaxy's most feared warriors, working side by side with civilians, sharing tools and techniques, laughing at misunderstandings caused by translation errors. Dark Elris approached with his datapad clutched in his forearms, his expression mixing wonder and confusion. "Governor, I have been reviewing the casualty reports from the human forces. They lost 17 soldiers during the ground assault, with 43 wounded. Every single death occurred while they were protecting Villani civilians or extracting survivors from danger. Themis felt shame burn through him as he understood the implication. They died for us, for strangers they had never met. And they do not seem to think it is remarkable, Kelris added, gesturing toward a group of Marines helping repair a school building. I asked Sergeant Riley why she risked her life to save those families in Sector 7, and she looked at me like I'd asked why water is wet. She said, because they needed help. What else would I do? Admiral Morrison walked across the plaza with Captain Hendricks and Ambassador Webb, returning from another meeting with the Galactic Council via long-range communication. The Admiral's face showed the weariness of someone fighting bureaucratic battles after surviving military ones. Elder Themis, Morrison greeted him with a respectful nod. I wanted to update you on the situation with the Council. Let me guess, Themis said with bitter understanding. They are more concerned about human intervention than Dragath genocide. Morrison smiled without humor. You understand politics better than I hoped. The Council has spent the last 3 days debating whether our response violated their sovereignty protocols, completely ignoring the fact that we saved 30,000 lives. 12,000, Themis corrected quietly. 12,000 Vellani survived. The Dragath killed or consumed the rest before you arrived. The silence that followed was heavy with shared grief. Morrison's expression hardened, and Themis saw the anger beneath the diplomatic calm. This human cared about the lives lost, genuinely mourned people he had never known. I am sorry we did not arrive sooner, Morrison said, and his regret sounded completely sincere. You arrived when no one else would come at all, Themis replied. The entire galaxy heard our distress call, Admiral. Dozens of species capable of mounting a rescue chose safety over compassion. Only humanity responded, and for that, you have our eternal gratitude. Ambassador Webb cleared his throat. Elder Themis, the Council has requested that you provide testimony about the incident, specifically addressing humanity's conduct during the rescue operation. I assume I do not need to tell you how important your words will be? Themis understood perfectly. His testimony could reshape how the galaxy viewed humanity. When do they wish to hear from me? In 2 hours, Webb replied. They are convening an emergency session to address what they are calling the Calric situation, as if the real situation was human intervention rather than Dragath aggression. I will be ready, Themis promised. But first, there is something I must show you. He led the human delegation to the colony's memorial center, which had miraculously survived the battle with only minor damage. Inside, Vellani artists had been working non-stop to create a record of what had happened, not just the attack, but the rescue. The walls were covered with artwork depicting human ships arriving, Marines fighting to protect civilians, Dr. Grant treating the wounded despite knowing nothing about Vellani biology. But the centerpiece was a massive sculpture, a human soldier kneeling to shield a pose. Vellani child with their own body while Dragath swarmed around them. This is Sergeant Riley, Themis explained. The sculptor watched her save 3 families while under heavy fire. She disobeyed orders, risked court-martial, and nearly died all to protect people she had just met. This monument will stand for generations, reminding us that courage is not about fearlessness, but about choosing to help despite the danger. Morrison stared at the sculpture for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. She's going to hate this. Riley avoids recognition like it is a disease. Then she has something in common with most heroes, Themis observed. They never think they did anything special. The time for the council session arrived, and Themis found himself standing before holographic representatives of 47 different species, the same species that had ignored his distress call. He felt anger building as he prepared to speak, but he channeled it into purpose. Members of the Galactic Council, I am Elder Themis, governor of what remains of Calrix IV colony, he began. 3 weeks ago, I led a thriving community of 30,000 Vellani artists, traders, families who had never known war. Then the Dragoth came, and we sent out a desperate call for help. He paused, looking at each representative. Every species in this chamber received that call. You heard our children crying, heard us begging for rescue, and you did nothing. You cited territorial disputes, resource limitations, political complications, every excuse except the truth, which is that you were too afraid. Outraged murmurs rippled through the council, but Themis continued relentlessly. Only one species answered our call: humanity. The species you fear, the species you call monsters and warmongers, the species you claim is too violent for civilized society. They traveled 3 days at maximum speed, deployed their entire battle fleet, and fought a war you were too afraid to fight. Council Representative Zathran, a multi-limbed being from the Pelian Confederacy, spoke up defensively. The human military response was disproportionate and violated established protocols for intervention in sovereign systems. Their deployment without council authorization sets a dangerous precedent. Dangerous? Themis felt his voice rising. You want to discuss danger? 18,000 Vellani are dead because of your protocols. Human protocols saved the remaining 12,000. Their soldiers died protecting my people. 17 graves now stand in our colony, marking the price humanity paid for your cowardice. Another representative, this one from the Korthan Republic, interjected with barely concealed hostility. The Korthans remember human ruthlessness from the border wars. Their reputation for violence is well earned. Let me tell you what I witnessed about human violence. Themis interrupted. I watched their ships obliterate the Dragoth fleet with precision that minimized damage to our colony. I watched their marines fight through overwhelming odds to rescue civilians. I watched their doctors treat our wounded despite having no knowledge of our physiology. And yes, I watched them kill the Dragoth who were slaughtering innocents. He moved closer to the holographic displays. The Korthan representative speaks of human ruthlessness, but conveniently forgets why that reputation exists. The Korthans invaded human space, enslaved human colonies, murdered millions. Humanity responded with overwhelming force to stop an empire of conquest. Is that ruthlessness or justice? Admiral Morrison, watching from the side, seemed surprised that Themis knew the true history of the border wars. The truth was that Dr. Kelris had done extensive research, accessing records the Council had tried to suppress. Zathran attempted to regain control of the session. Elder Themis, we understand your gratitude toward humanity, but you must see the bigger picture. If we allow military forces to deploy without authorization whenever they deem it necessary, then maybe more colonies will survive when you fail them. Themis shouted, Your bigger picture let my people die. Humanity's smaller picture individual humans choosing to help saved us. He softened his voice slightly. I have watched humans work alongside my people for 3 days now. I have seen their soldiers comfort frightened children. Their engineers teach our workers advanced construction techniques. Their doctors exhaust themselves saving Vellani lives. These are not the actions of conquerors. The Council thanks you for your testimony, Zathran said formally, clearly wanting to end this uncomfortable confrontation. We will take your words into consideration during our deliberations. You are welcome, Themis replied. But know this, Calrix IV is formally requesting alliance with humanity and withdrawal from Council protection. We would rather trust the species who answered our call than the organization that ignored it. The session ended in chaos as representatives argued over the implications. Themis returned to find Morrison waiting with an expression mixing pride and concern. That was quite a speech, the Admiral said. You just created a political firestorm. Good, Themis replied. The galaxy needs to burn away its misconceptions about your people. Over the following days, something remarkable happened. Other species that had been quietly grateful for human intervention began speaking up. The Pelian miners who humanity had defended from Corthan enslavement 20 years ago provided testimony about human mercy. The Draken refugees who humanity had sheltered during their civil war spoke about human compassion. Each testimony chipped away at the carefully constructed narrative of human savagery. The truth emerged slowly, but inevitably humanity was fierce because they protected the weak, violent because they opposed the cruel, feared because they could not be bullied or corrupted. On the final day before the human fleet departed,